semester, we've read a range of different texts. For example, Henry IV, Mayor of Casterbridge, A Turn with the Sun, all of which have given us different perspectives about what makes a person great. Now, we've all learned that greatness is a very subjective term, but one thing we haven't really covered in this class is how a person's perception of greatness can change throughout their life. Now, I can't exactly track one individual's perception of greatness throughout their life, so I thought I'd do the second best thing.
By making friends.
I feel like greatness is sort of, it's what you do. I think that it's sort of your accomplishments and your achievements that make that, I don't know, it's just when you do good or do a lot of good, and then that sort of makes you great.
I would define greatness as anything that is greatly above average, whether it's a performance or a person or a thing, anything that's just really awesome.
That's not an easy question. And it depends on the context, I suppose, but for myself, greatness would have a lot to do with making the world better for future generations.
Greatness is about scope, range. It's also a comparison of better than most everything else. It is superior for reasons of some kind of substantive value, that it possesses whatever it is, that is more powerful and has greater effect than something lesser than that which is great.
Well, my friend Shifra, me, my friend Vivian, my friend Lucy.
Oh. What makes them great?
Because they play with me and they're always able to come to my birthday parties. I also consider Vincent van Gogh great because he was such a famous painter and because I think all his paintings are beautiful.
Great.
Great people, I mean, honestly, I just define successful people because, I mean, I feel like if you have the ability to be successful, then you're great. If you have that sort of passion and motivation, then you should be considered great.
I think the first thing that would come to mind for me would be someone like Martin Luther King, but also anything like great poets, great writers. Toni Morrison has spoken to many people, and many people would consider her writing to be great. Also, great dancers. Anything that just speaks to you.
Maybe I'll have other ideas about what's great.
I honestly think it depends on your own personal experiences. Like, if you've had good experience or bad experiences, it could affect your opinions. But I mean, I guess that I would say, personally, I haven't had like too much of a change, so I can't really say. But for people in general, it honestly just depends on what's happened to them.
I think that it changes, like, children find such small details to be very, very interesting and great. Like, a kid I know finds snails to be great, whereas I would not find them to be great. At my age, I find dance and really good writing to be great, and I think my grandparents also see greatness in smaller details, and like my grandmother would find quilting to be great, or woodworking.
I imagine that that's a really good question. So when people are younger, they maybe think of greatness along what their personal aspiration has been. So if they were really interested in gymnastics, they think of greatness as, you know, a great gymnast. If they were really interested in sports, they think of greatness as some athlete. Or maybe they're interested in politics, so they think the president who they wanted elected is a great person. But as you get older, you start thinking more in terms of, well, how does it fit into all these other contexts? So, you know, what is great for other people? And you start thinking not just about your little passion or interest, but more about what's good, what is great relative to all the different types of pursuits that people have, whether it's exploration or science or social sciences or political activism or whatever.
I think their ideas of greatness change because from all that happens in their lifetime and all of the daunting things that happen in their lifetime and all of the challenges that happen that in fact might impede or interrupt or destroy whatever accomplishments they achieve, because it has something to do certainly with accomplishment, not only for themselves but most importantly for others. Again, in the social justice way, I think that the older you get, the more you realize that it's the grace that you did this with in the end, and the grace with which you, and the generosity and the humor at which you acquired all this and were able to accomplish all this, in spite of the fact that there's many flaws and many mistakes along the way.
Throughout this class, we've talked a great deal about how subjective the term greatness is. And when we were first assigned this project, I knew that whatever I did, I wanted to somehow collect different perspectives on greatness and share that, because I think showing a lot of different perspectives and perceptions of greatness is a lot more powerful and accurate than just one personal opinion of the term. Now, one thing we haven't talked about in this class is how a person's perception of greatness can change throughout their lifetime. I think this is really a key part of a person's opinion on greatness, since people's experiences really make up their idea of this term, and since this term is so broad and so all-encompassing, it really can transform throughout a person's life. I thought it would be really interesting if I interviewed a range of different people of various ages and then put them together and tried to analyze and see if I saw different patterns about how people's perceptions of greatness can change throughout their life. So throughout my interviews, people usually just assumed that the audience knew what greatness meant or why the interviewee considered people to be great. For example, when Isabel said that Martin Luther King was great, she didn't explain why. She just said, like most people consider Martin Luther King great. Now, Steve, on the other hand, was a little bit more specific, and this could be because of his age, perhaps. He said that he talked about different environmental scientists who helped impact the world and made change in the lives of others. And he said that specifically, whereas a lot of the other people I interviewed didn't say exactly why they considered people to be great. They just said that they were great, and it was implied why they were great. During my interviews, the people would often say that they considered a person to be great, but not elaborate on why they considered that individual to be great. For example, when somebody said that a person was a great writer, they'd just simply say they were a great writer and not say they were a great writer because they sold over 10,000 books, or this person was a great writer because they provoked emotion in me. They would just simply state it and think that it was implied about why this person was great. I found it quite surprising that when I asked the question, what are some examples of people you consider great, 2 out of the 3 people I interviewed didn't even name one person, but instead were very vague and general and explained that greatness somehow equated to success. I expected people to rattle off a list of a bunch of people they considered great, in addition to Martin Luther King, like maybe Obama or Gandhi, and then go on to explain why they consider them to be great. I found it very interesting when Isabel talked about how older people often find greatness in things small children would see greatness in. For example, she used the idea of quilting, what her grandmother considers to be great. I never really considered this idea before, and I found it to be very intriguing and for the most part accurate, because when my younger cousin makes my grandmother a painting, my grandmother loves it, even though if her grandchild hadn't made it, she wouldn't consider it to be great. But because of the significance it holds to her, it is great in her eyes. Another thing I found to be very interesting and surprising was when my cousin Neve talked about all the people she considered to be great. The interview was pretty much going as I expected. She was talking about her friends who she thought were great, herself, and then she mentioned Vincent van Gogh. My jaw practically dropped to the floor. I was in shock that this 5-year-old knew about this famous painter that 45-year-olds would probably not even cite and would instead talk about a pop culture figure, whereas this 5-year-old who had just learned the other day about this painter in school considered him to be great.